Hello, welcome back to Learning How to Code. So, like I said previously, we're now going to move on to taking an input. And as you can see, I've made a couple of changes. You should see a link in the description, hopefully, that will automatically send you to a place where you can copy and paste the text into your version of Visual Studio. And if you don't feel like it, or for whatever reason it's not there, just pause and write this down. Just this stuff. Everything else is exactly the same. So first we're just going to run the program and we're going to see what it does. And so we see it's asking for my name. It's a little bit different from before. It's not saying 2 plus 2. So let's go. I'm going to put in my name, ASDF. I should put my account name, I guess. That's what I'm called. And it says it. And it asks for my name, and it told me my name. It is Koliok13. So how does this work? I wish I kept that there. Let me bring that back real quick. I'll bring it back when I need it. So as you can see, I'm kind of doing something similar to what we did last time. I'm using this thing to tell the computer, I want you to display this text. However, there's a slight difference. Beforehand, if you remember the previous code, let me just go back to it real quick. I can't control Z for whatever reason, okay. But the previous code looks something like this, where it said console.writeLine display whatever. In this case, what I'm doing this time is I'm saying console write. The reason for that is, as you see in the program, we want to type something after this. I want to do this. And you can see that it's written on the same line. However, if I were to instead turn it into line, what you would find happen is that instead my code is going to, my input, where I'm going to write in my stuff, is going to end up under it. And, I don't want that, which is why it says console.write instead of console.writeLine. And besides that little thing, it works exactly the same way. It just displays whatever is in these parentheses to the console, except it's just going to say, don't move to the next line, stay on the same line. Now, here's something a little bit different. We haven't seen this before. And I'm saying string input. Obviously, you know what an input is. It means, it's usually, some type of information that you are sending to something to try to get an output out of it. If you remember from algebra class, let's say you have a function equals y equals 2x. If f of x is equal to 2x, if your input x is 2, that means your output is 4, because 2x means 2 times 2, which is equal to 4. So this is basically our x this is the x for our output. And so what it does is it's just going to read in whatever we type, and as soon as we press enter, it's going to store it in this thing called input. Now this thing called input is actually called a variable, and it's a very specific type of variable called a string. It is called, I won't go into details why a sentence is called a string. That will be for later. But just understand that when you want to have multiple letters written one after the other, we call them strings. Now you see I have another variable called output. And basically this is what we're going to display once we get our name. In this case, we're going to see your name is, and you see I have a plus sign. And what this does is it basically adds my variable to my string out to whatever's over here. So what's going to happen is you're going to see it say your name is, then it's going to go to my input, and then it's going to get my name from there, which is Koliok13. And it's going to store that in this variable. Then we go to this last line, and it's going to say console.writeLine output. Or basically, as we said before, it's going to evaluate or get whatever is in here, and then it's just going to display it. And that's why it displays your name is whatever. And I bet you can all kind of, if you remember what happened last time, we can actually change this up a little bit. We don't actually need string output. What we can actually do is we can simply just take this out and have it evaluate with, have it, get the answer from within itself without having any of this. I just kept it there, to give us another example of variable. Oh yeah, let me double check to make sure you understand what a variable is. Once again, a variable is nothing more than a name that we are saying store this information at, and it's going to be called this. Or I said that wrong. A variable is nothing more than a space for where you're going to store information. The string, this part right here, says what type of information is there, and this part, which is called input, just says this is the name of this information. So anytime we type in input, the computer will know, oh, you're calling for this thing. You're asking for whatever is stored in this space. In this case, it's our name. And you can see inside of the console.write line, inside the parentheses, it is doing something similar to 2 plus 2, except we're kind of combining the string with the input. Because they're both the same type, they're able to automatically be combined. And I just want to make sure you know that this isn't always true. As we get further along, you will not always be able to automatically combine. But for something built in, usually they can automatically combine. And I'll explain. I shouldn't have talked about built-in. You don't know what that is yet. And you'll see the program, and let's just run it, and you'll see the program runs the exact same way. I'll just type in ASDF again, and you see it just say your name is ASDF. The program runs exactly the same way, with no differences whatsoever. It's just, I just wanted to make sure, you get a good chance to look at, how variables work. And if you want to play around with it a bit more and say, if you want to be a little childish, you could simply say, let's say the person with the name whatever, if the name whatever is dumb. Yeah, and you can kind of keep plussing onto each other as long as you make sure you end with this. Oh man, I'll talk about it a little bit after. Is dumb, put a nice little exclamation point. And you should, you can all kind of expect what's going to happen. So just put in my name, and then person with the name Kodiak13 is dumb, and I'm probably right. And also very important, something I forgot to say last time. Make sure you end everything with a semicolon. Now, why do we end everything with a semicolon? Or is everything within brackets anyway? Brackets. As you can see, these are not parentheses, these are brackets with a semicolon. If you're within brackets, I mean. Let me explain this better because you can kind of see there's brackets here. So basically, if you end in brackets, you don't need a semicolon usually. If you end in parentheses, you may need a semicolon if you're inside of brackets, and it depends on what type of brackets. Because you can see up here, this doesn't need brackets because I'll explain later, but it's special. So these parentheses don't need brackets, but everything in here does. Let me explain it now because it's not that hard. As I said before in the previous video, this is basically where the computer goes to start our program. These things are called functions. I'm not going to go into what a function is, but just understand that this is not code. This isn't technically code. It is similar to a variable. It is just a name, but it's a special name. It's a special name that lets the computer know this is where I start running my code. So it doesn't need to have anything ending it. The computer knows that this, as far as it's concerned, anything that has, all this information, like in the format of this, means it's going to have brackets. And if it has brackets and it's in this form, it doesn't need parentheses. Now, the reason why we need, these semicolons here is because the computer wouldn't be able to tell where something starts or ends. Like you can see, basically about writing a sentence without any periods. It's like, I like cupcakes, I like donuts, it's really great. There was no stop. If you just write a sentence with no, no periods, it's going to be a bit hard to read. People won't know where a complete thought begins and ends. You have to have the period. And similar, a computer needs the same thing in this language. In other languages, they have different ways of accomplishing this. Some of them will use spaces, some of them may actually use a period. It depends on what language you're using, but in this case, we are using C sharp, which means we will be using a C-like notation where we will end with semicolons. Anyway, I hope you like this. Like, comment, subscribe, whatever the equivalent is, and let me know how I can make this better. Thank you.